Righty-ho, can you see my screen? Anybody, please say yes in the chat
Yes,
box.
Mark.
You should. Yep. Oh, Ashley says yep. So we saw at the start of April that the stock market crashed. The world's gone mad. It's the end of the boom and bust, and yet within a month, then the message were the markets are back to where they were, which shows the stupidity of man and the stupidity of markets, really. And Sicilian name but Greek in background. Okay, that was going to be my second guess. Um, and then in the blog, if you scroll down, we've got two blogs for me. One's the Forex one and one's my investing corner. If you knew, the three most recent posts go here. And then the fourth one, which was my one from Sunday, has now moved off the scale. So you can go into here and click on this and you can find all of the old investing ones. It takes you to here. And the most recent one I had was on Sunday. I said, what crash? I had a great month. And the reason I had a good month is, if you have a read through the article and watch the video, is that I've been buying gold and silver for the last few years. And as a result of which, my gold and silver went up as my stocks went down. And then a couple of days ago, as the stock started to recover, my gold was going down and my stocks were going up. So it's all counterbalanced. And I find that this is a much better way to do it. What I'm going to talk about today, I always talk about joining the dots and what I'm looking to do next. And I am focusing at the moment on Bitcoin. And I have been in Bitcoin, as you know, since 2020, made a lot of money from Bitcoin. And then it all came tumbling down. But by which point, everything I had left was bought and paid for, including most of the members that were with me at the time. Some hung on, but even the ones that hung on still came out with a massive gain once everything picked back up again. I think Bitcoin is going to keep going, and I'm going to explain in this session why I think it's going to keep going. Not financial advice as ever, but this is the way that I try to balance things. And the conventional wisdom from a financial advisor, I don't know if it still is, but it certainly used to be just put it all in the stock market, but divide it into different sectors. So you have some in the airline industry, you have some in, I don't know, think of an industry, hospitality or whatever, and you balance it out and you have some in finance. But as I said many times before, the problem is when it all comes down, which is what we've just seen, when it comes down, the stock market generally, it all comes down. Now, I did buy some on the dips. And again, I mentioned that in this video, and I'll show you some of those in a little while. And I bought some of the blue chips. And I'm not normally a big fan of the blue chips because they're too expensive, but hey, they were cheap. I'm not convinced that this current rally is going to go on forever. I suspect we may see prices on the S&P go back up to 6,000. Could be wrong, but if it does get anywhere up there, I am anticipating a big drop, and the same for the Nasdaq and everything else. And then the other thing, again, I am looking at still is metals, and we'll go through that as well. So if anybody's got any questions or whatever, then stick them in the chat box. Dan says, just finished listening to the Bitcoin Standard today, becoming a believer. Okay, well, I'm not here to convince you one way or the other, but I am here to explain to you what I'm doing and why. And yesterday, particularly, well, again, what I said on Sunday, and we're still in the same boat at the moment. And actually, this is a bit clearer on MT4 charts. So what I was explaining on Sunday when it came to FX and when it came to stocks and everything, teasingly, on Friday last week, price came up. And if you recall, I think on Wednesday, Thursday last week, I think it was Wednesday, I did a video on update in the members area in my Forex blog. And I think it was when price was down here. And I said, it looks to me as though the dollar wants to go back and retest 100. But I would anticipate that at that point, it would at the very least pause, if not reject. And that's not me being a clever beggar, that is just common sense. 100 is a massive area of previous support and resistance. It's a massive whole number, and everybody in his dog is aware of it. And if you scroll back and look in previous history, we've got 2024, it was the low, 2023, it was the low, 2022, it was major resistance, then broke through, became support. And I seem to recall, if we go further back, in 2020, and that was after the rebound after COVID. Yes, it went through, but it's been a massive area for yonks. This is 2015, rejected to the pip at the same area. So clearly it is a massive area, and we are always trading probability. So the probability was it was going to reject. And then the next part of the puzzle, what I was saying to my investing group, is that the Nasdaq. So the Nasdaq came up to 20,000. It did pierce through a little bit, but once again, this is massive make your mind up area in the stock market. If it can break through here, then I wouldn't be surprised that the market makers and Wall Street and everybody else is going to try to push it up here. But then personally, I think it's going to tank. Again, I could be wrong. The other option is it rejects from here and it starts to resume the downtrend as well. Here was the point at which Trump capitulated because of the bond market. And the bond market, I explained this in the live training session last week. The bond market ultimately, if the bond market collapses, the whole financial system collapses, because the bond market is the way that governments raise money. And there has been an issue with China buying less US debt of late in the last year or so, and certainly now more than ever they will be doing it as their bonds come up for renewal. They are not rolling them over, they are putting their cash elsewhere. They are rumored to be sat on 20,000 tons, I think it is, of gold, and they have been accumulating heavily. And those in the gold industry are convinced that they hold significantly more than they are letting on. And in the background of all of that, there's still the BRICS countries, which originally was Brazil, Russia, what was the I? India, South Africa, now Saudi Arabia, and the BRICS, the C, what was it? China, of course, China. So the 50% of the world's population is in a country that is in the BRICS organization. And there was talk of the BRICS countries creating a gold-backed currency to get away from fiat and basically to break the American dollar to make it so that a BRICS currency would be the reserve currency of the world. And I have said many times before, I think in my lifetime, and certainly in Ashley's lifetime, the US dollar will not be the reserve currency anymore. They've got away with it for so long, they've weaponized it for so long. And as Putin rightly said a while ago to those in the BRICS countries, look, this is what they've done to us, i.e., they have put sanctions on, they have taken us out of the dollar system, etc. So there are more and more countries that are trading away from the dollar. But the thing is, with what makes Bitcoin particularly interesting, I think Bitcoin actually could be useful to the Americans as well as. So I'm going to go through that now. The other one in here was the S&P. So the S&P came up to the 200 EMA. We were in a clear bounce. This was the bond market rebound when Trump backed off and said, okay, we're going to have 90 days and we're going to do lots of deals, etc., etc. But again, 200, why do I use the 200 EMA? Because it is spookily accurate. The amount of times the price will come up and reject is more times than not. Again, if it gets through here, I wouldn't be surprised if we get up near 6,000. Bitcoin, I bought some Bitcoin the other day. I had it in a triangle pattern the other day and it broke out. Now it's come back down again. So now we're back into a conventional flag pattern. I don't know if Marcel's with us this morning and in Germany. If not, I have a session with him this afternoon, a private session. He was asking me why I bought Bitcoin the other day. And I bought some Bitcoin as a trade. I actually bought Bitcoin at 76,500 recently and also bought some at 81,000 as well on the dips. And the 76,500 was in here and that was up 25% the other day. And I bought some as a trade the other day. Basically, when it comes to crypto and when it comes to stocks, I'm 70% fundamentals and I use the technicals for the entry. And I think the main thing I had the other day, I had some support and resistance and I was looking on shorter time frames and we got the break of this trend of the flag pattern. And the theory of the flag pattern, as I showed you the other day, you measure the base of the flag pattern to the top of the triangle, which is 11,000, 12,000 move. And the theory goes that the breakout will be a similar amount, which spookily would take us up and around the all-time highs. Now, at the moment, 100,000, when we had the original crash and it went back down to 25,000, and if you recall, 2 years ago, I was posting in my investing blog and I was telling you guys in the live sessions, I was buying Bitcoin again at 25 because it was consolidating. And then we got the big breakouts again and bought more on the way up on the breakouts and the pullbacks M2 style. But now there's more and more things going on in the background, particularly with the Trump administration, that gives me more confidence that it will carry on. But what I was thinking last time, when we were up at 67,000 in 2021, before it tanked, we were, I mean, everybody was of a mind it was going to 100. And then at that point, I believed if we had gone to 1,000, we would have got, sorry, 100,000, we would have got a 30% drop because you would get a massive amount of profit taking. Now, they reckon that most of the recent buying that's going on in Bitcoin is not retail. It is more to do with ETFs and the big companies coming in now having it on their balance sheets and treasury. So my thinking is still that there will be profit taking at 100K. But if we can get through here, then the sky's the limit and off we go. So I'll show you now some fundamental reasons that support my theory that why I think Bitcoin could carry on and could become a very important. Now, if you've not watched it before, if you go into the blog members area, go to the crypto link. This was the video I did in 2020 when I explained why I was so confident about Bitcoin. And I said at the time, I titled it Why I Believed That This Could Be the Best Financial Decision in Your Lifetime. And boy, was it. And somewhere, actually, I still have a spreadsheet. I found this the other day. I have a spreadsheet in here that is from my original portfolio. And let me show you this. We've got ink open. I'm not very good with spreadsheets, so let's see what this does. It's got to be XLS, hasn't it? Oops. That one, I think. Maybe that's not it. No, that's not it. I can't find it. That's annoying because that's normally in the original portfolio crypto. Ah, there we go. Here we go. On the wrong screen. Okay, so this was my original portfolio. I've shown this before many times. Don't go off running around buying this. All the ones in red were the ones that we have sold over the last 2 or 3 years, and for different reasons. And the idea behind this was everything that I bought originally, the original portfolio for the beta testers in May 2020 went down to Hive here. And then the ones I've got rid of, this fund used to be a gaming token and they changed. Zcash and Dash were privacy tokens that the FBI were going after. And so there were various ones in here that we sold over a period. But if you bought Bitcoin in May of 2020 as one of the beta testers, you're still up 960% today. And even those who bought in the October, if you didn't take profits along the way, you're still up 530%. And Ethereum 1150%, Litecoin 209, XRP 960, and all of these are still back now. Well, some of them are put back into my A portfolio nowadays. Cardano was one of the best. We bought it at 5 cents and it went to $3. It was up 6,000%. It's still up 1,300%. So all of these returns are nuts. And then as the time wore on and we started adding, at one point I had every single token on here was in profit. That's how crazy the boom was. And if you hung on, even with the pullbacks we've had in recent weeks and months, at the moment Bitcoin's up, everything else is down. It's still up more money than you will make on the S&P probably in your lifetime from being in the right place at the right time. So actually this is not correct because it's not updated the price. And I paid a nice gentleman on, there we go, refresh all, I think that's what he said to do. Data. Oh, here we go, right, it's updated it. So the current price on Bitcoin today is 94,417. So those who bought it in the May, it's 1,000% up and 589. So massive, massive gains from being in the right thing at the right time. And I think, could be wrong, I think that Bitcoin could be ready to go again. Now, if you have a look at that video, if you've not watched this before, and if you don't know anything about crypto, you don't understand it, I had lots of people tell me that they learned more in half an hour here than they've learned in numerous courses and everything else. So I urge you to watch it. But one of the comments that we were making at the time is that some of the fund managers were beginning to think that Bitcoin could be similar to gold as an asset class. And I also talked in here, there were numerous things I talked about. There was Paul Tudor Jones, the head of a billionaire fund manager. He was talking about Bitcoin being a great speculation at under 2%. And he was talking about, he thought that Bitcoin could probably make more than all the rest of his portfolio put together. And that turned out to be true as well. And then this guy, this gentleman was 83 at the time. I don't know if he's still with us, but he was the previous CEO of the Prudential. And he said in 2020, I've never said it before, he always thought that crypto, etc., was just didn't get it, no point. But as beginning to look at it as a long-term safe haven for my money or short-term speculative bet. So whilst all of that was going on, I spoke at the time. Remember, at the time of that webinar, I think Bitcoin was at 12 grand. It was estimated if the leading funds came in that that would pump Bitcoin from 12 to 40 to 50. Well, it actually went up to 67 within 5 months of that presentation. And then other things I talked about in there was that the more it went mainstream, the more relevant it would become. And on the 21st of October, when I was doing that presentation, a couple of days before, PayPal announced that they'd integrated crypto. Well, that, to be honest, was a load of nonsense. It was just PayPal doing a half measure to try not to lose market share. But it was a significant step in the right direction. And then this is Paul Tudor Jones saying, okay, this repeating the fact that it could outperform everything else. And then what I talked about was all these companies were starting to come into crypto. And the more that the big companies came in, the more of an impact it would have. So I said at the time in October, I believed it will double, but I have 20 other tokens in my portfolio could do even better. And I said at the time, with Cardano went up 6,000%. So my strategy has been all along is to have Bitcoin as the main asset and then to use the smaller ones to generate the bigger profits and then use some of the profits to put into Bitcoin. So that is the way that I managed to accumulate a decent sized portfolio. And then at the time, Visa and MasterCard were starting to come in a way. And so the more that the mainstream were coming in, the message that I was giving is that the more of this lot came in, the more easier you could make access, the better the ability to on-road and off-road, i.e. to be able to spend crypto for the masses, then that would be when it all starts to kick in. And that, I believe, is what's happening now. And the thing is, you have, what was I going to say? Oh, the internet. So in 1997, when Amazon launched, there were approximately 10 million users on the internet. Within 10 years, there were 1 billion people using the internet, I believe. So as a result of which, if you look at the curve of Amazon's growth and their sales growth, clearly they sold more, the more people could get access to Amazon. And the same scenario with crypto. There are billions of people who have access to crypto who don't understand it. It's too complicated. The wallets are scary and moving crypto around is scary and it's slow. And then if you want to convert your crypto back into fiat, it can be expensive and risky and not easy. So some of the big news that's gone on in this last few days, well, the big one in terms of ease of use is that MasterCard now, not only are they involved in crypto, but they're now doing it whereby you can spend your stable coins on a normal credit card. And what that means is if you've got crypto and you're outside the dollar system, or even if you're inside the dollar system and got some crypto, if you want to go to your local supermarket to buy something, you no longer have the issue of having to move it around and the risks that go with it. You simply go and tap your credit card and it will debit it from the stable coin. So with the stable coin, so back to this, parts of the reason why I am so much of a believer more than ever now. Remember, the 83-year-old CEO of the big group I just showed you, George Ball, was talking about Bitcoin being like gold as a store of value. And this is Howard Lutnick, the new Secretary of Commerce in the US. And he starts this podcast discussion with that phrase, Bitcoin is like gold. And the advantage Bitcoin has got over gold is that gold is heavy, it's bulky, it's not easy to move around, and the storage costs and insurance, etc. whereas Bitcoin, you could have $10 billion worth on a pen drive. So that's what he's starting to talk about. And this guy has been on Wall Street for years, and he has been pro Bitcoin for years. So this is not a new phenomenon. And there are many people around Trump now. Vance is known to hold a significant amount of Bitcoin. Robert Kennedy Jr., basically, the majority of his team are all pro crypto. So the message going forward again is that if they're putting this message out, and then 2, 3 days ago, Gensler, if you recall, Gary Gensler was the head of the SEC until Trump was elected. He then petulantly resigned on the morning of Trump's inauguration because he knew he was going to get sacked. And he'd spent his time basically trying to screw the crypto industry. He would say to the crypto companies, look, come in and talk to us and let's come up with some regulations. The companies would go in and talk to him or the founders and explain what they were doing. And then they say, right, you've broken the law, we're going to sue you now. And they tried to sue XRP for $2 billion. So it was spiteful and it was nasty. Trump, in his initial presidency, was also not pro crypto. And obviously that has changed. So then when Paul Atkins was sworn in the other day, he came back and he said, look, market participants engaging with this technology deserve clear regulatory rules of the road. And that is what they have been asking for. Atkins said innovation has been stifled for the last several years due to market and regulatory uncertainty that unfortunately the SEC has fostered. So he is in there to sort it out from a positive side. Hester Peirce has been a commissioner on the SEC for years, and she was always pro crypto. And so the whole thing has changed. And then you think, well, before we go on to that, why? Eric Trump famously at Christmas predicted that it would surge to 1 million, and he's confident. And they did rather well, did the Trump brothers, out of the pump on the Trump coin recently. So they're heavily involved as well. And then this was an interesting comment. So remember, I was explaining to you that the difficulty with crypto is if you want to go to your local supermarket, it's not as straightforward as it could be. And this MasterCard situation changes that significantly. The other thing is that the poor countries or people in poorer countries get hammered by conventional banking. And if you are sending money from on the SWIFT system, even in Western Europe and in the more, what was I going to say? What word? The more advanced countries, SWIFT is 30, 40 years old. It is slow and it is expensive and it can take days for the money to arrive. So then you have companies like Wise who came along and they're much quicker. But you can see on the map here, the blue area is the areas where you are able to send money both ways. And what has happened in the States, for example, for years is you had lots of Mexican workers would go to the US to work, in particular in California, in agriculture, and to send money home, which was the reason that they were there. They used to get hammered by the likes of Western Union, and I think Western Union fees could be up to 10%. So these poor people are doing all this work for less than minimum wage, and then when they send it back to their own country, they're getting screwed by the intermediaries. Now they can send money and it costs pennies to send as much as you want to Mexico and or other areas of South America or India or Africa, etc., that you can see on the map. And now it can be done with stable coins because at the moment, if you send money to some of these countries, they don't have the infrastructure or the means. So the recipient receives the stable coins and then can't spend them without having to then convert them to fiat. And by the time they're finished, it's probably cost them 10% again. I need a quick sip of my tea. If anybody has any questions, stick them in the box. No, Dan, I just use the same template for weekly and for daily. Right. Why would Trump suddenly decide to go pro crypto? Apart from he received a lot of money in his election campaign, but then again, so did the Democrats. So both sides of the political um, void in America, both of them received money from crypto. But going back, if you remember, I said a little earlier, America has a huge problem because of their debt, as we know. and more countries are reluctant to buy their debt, i.e., their bonds and their T-bills. One advantage of crypto for America would be that all the stablecoin countries, all the stablecoin companies have to hold an equal amount of dollars and dollar assets on their balance sheet. So if these stablecoin companies start to increase the amount of coins that they create, let's say they currently have $10 billion and within 3 years they have $100 billion, it means they have to buy a lot of US Treasury bills. So you can see that there is a benefit there. There's another talk and rumor that America is going to revalue its gold supply. It's going to sell a chunk of its gold to buy Bitcoin, which would push the price up as well as. And the more people that come into this, when you go back to the analogy of Amazon taking 10 years to suddenly see a massive growth in their sales, ergo their profitability, was because more people were coming into this space. So that is my thinking as to why I think it's here to stay. And this is a very positive step forward. There's other things been going on in the background. Circle are now integrating crypto into their payment network. Crypto.com, I own quite a few of their tokens, cheap at the moment. If you watch Formula One, you will have seen their banners everywhere. They also sponsor the stadium in Miami, I think. I think they're committed to something like 200 million in sponsorship for the next 20 years. So they're very prominent, but they're also regulated in a lot of countries. And they've now done a deal in America to be able to supply. We'll have to read all this. I'll put the link in. But basically, it's just another tick in the box of legitimizing crypto in America, for my opinion. And then the other thing is that there are new cryptocurrency ETFs on the way. And with the ETFs, exchange traded funds, you will see that Bitcoin last year, in the February of last year, when Bitcoin, I think was around 25 grand. Where was Bitcoin last year? No, I'm talking nonsense. It was 40 odd grand, wasn't it? There we go. February of 24. No, around 50k. And if you go back again in my investing blog, when it was down there at 50k, I said in the February of last year that I believed that by the end of the year, it would be at 100k. And I got that right because by November, we hit and broke through 100k. I've said for this year, I think it could go to 200k. At the moment, it's not looking great on that theory, but I still think it's going to continue to go up. So all of this was to do the main thing with the bigger participants coming in was when they were legal to create ETFs. Well, the next ETF that's rumored to be coming along is Solana. And Solana is one of the tokens I have in my A portfolio as well. And there are other tokens. So Solana is one of them here, that there are filings for them. And Litecoin and HBAR, which are in my main portfolio as well. So the more easier that big capital can come into crypto, then the more likely it is that we will see the surges in some of the other tokens like we've seen in Bitcoin. And so at the moment, I'll show you my A grade portfolio. I've shared this with you before. I think it's that one. Here we go. So this is my main portfolio. This is stuff that I've held. I showed you on the spreadsheet. I've held most of this since the beginning and added to it on numerous occasions. So I've got Bitcoin, as you know. If you don't want crypto, but you want to have some stocks that you might be able to run in a tax efficient way and not have the hassle of crypto at the minute, you can look at something like MicroStrategy, which I've shown you many times before, that we made 1400% on last year. And then you've got Ethereum. Ethereum's in the doldrums, and I really don't know what's going to happen with Ethereum. I used to have 50%, 55% maybe Bitcoin and 25% Ethereum. And then January this year, when Ethereum was back up here, I sold half of it and converted it to Bitcoin. I felt Bitcoin was the safer one. So this is Solana. Solana is the one that is rumored that is likely to be the next ETF. So if the same thing happens to Bitcoin as happens to Solana has happened to Bitcoin, then this could be a massive move. And I've shown you recently how I do this. I put trend lines on. I've got M2 breakouts, pullbacks. I actually was buying more again at around 120 on this recent pullback. This is an accumulation phase to me. This obviously it needs to break the EMAs ideally. So I have an alarm set here as well. I really should move this trend line now to there. But I buy nibble away at things when we get into these accumulation phases because it's clearly a major area of support and resistance. The more conservative way is to think of a break of here and a break and close above the 200 EMA. I never buy a crypto unless I think it can make at least 35% in a short period of time. And that was 70% higher 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So for me, no brainer. Every time I have some spare cash, I buy some more of this. And then I told my investing group in recent weeks where I've been buying Cardano. I bought Cardano on the big dip. I bought on the dip again, and most recently bought again a month ago, roughly where it is now. Now, again, notice the 200 EMA. It's failed to break. We might be on another run down, which is why I have an alarm set here again. Above the weekly 200, I will buy more. But I am not buying huge amounts now. I am just nibbling away at it. So every time I have a few $100s spare, I will put it into something like this. Link is a more substantial token. And I'd not been buying Link too much of late, although I did buy on a dip down here in March. Litecoin, I don't think I've bought any Litecoin recently. Again, if it was to come back down here, I personally would buy some more. At the moment, I'm more interested in some of these other ones because they're getting a lot better press. This was a bit of a fake out on XRP. The most recent buy on XRP was around $2. It's coming down there again. I would buy again, and I would be buying at different levels on the way down. What is going on with Trump as well is he gave the SEC and the heads of the groups like XRP, Cardano, etc., gave them and the SEC 180 days to get their heads together and come back with a regulatory framework that would be beneficial for everybody and give more security to American buyers of crypto. Well, that was stated, I think, the first week of his inauguration. So that's the end of January. So we're talking February, March, April, May, June, July. So end of July, August could be the start of the regulatory, maybe at the end of August with it being the holiday period. So that is what I am doing. That is why I am doing what I am doing. And that is why I'm focusing on crypto at the minute. The other thing I'm focusing on is metals and these high yield stocks I've shown you before. Silver, there's a lot of clues with silver. I've spoken to you with you about this a lot as well, why I'm a big buyer of silver. I have twice as much silver as I have gold because technically it was previous all-time high was 49.50. It is used. There is a massive shortage. There is not enough silver to satisfy the need for the manufacturers, and all of the silver market is rigged anyway. And there is a theory now that the Chinese have now said to their public and to some of their insurance companies, buy silver. And if they do, that could cause one of the American hedge funds or even one of the big banks to be in a real financial mess. And so nowadays, more than ever, countries can utilize currency and assets and commodities basically instead of a war. And that could have huge repercussions for the Americans. And I am continuing to buy silver as well. And then the final one is this ETF thing I've shown you. And again, I share this with investors in the investing group. I did an update the other week. And at the end of April, I've been in this for 6 weeks at that point. I can't remember now. I think I spent around $10,000 on a live account. And I have, well, as of today, I am at an average APR of 43% return, which is really nice. I would need to have $1 million to be making that kind of money. Potentially, my $10,000 should, if it carries on doing what it's doing, give me a return of $40,000 in a year. So that's the other thing I'm doing. Now, when we come to forex and what's going on, as you know, every day I look at this setup. And bearing in mind, I've shown you earlier how the dollar index has come up to 100, S&P came up to a level, NASDAQ came up to a level. Yesterday was a bank holiday. And when I turned this on yesterday and had a look at this, remember, this is where I am trying to work out where the big money is flowing. So we had red on stocks, we had red on the dollar, we had gold and silver suddenly rebounded. Now, I was hoping to buy gold again at 3,100 and at 3,000. This sudden flip back up within 2 days. I wasn't expecting it so quickly, but this ties back in with what I showed you in the first place with this scenario with the dollar index and with the S&P. If they drop, this is how money works, money flows. So if the dollar and the stock market drops, money flows back into gold because it is the ultimate safe haven, and silver tends to follow. So that is what's gone on. And then again, I was hoping that some of these silver and gold miners were going to drop further to buy some more. But this is one of my best silver miners. And even now, technically it's under all the EMAs, so it's not great. But the recent high is 48% and the high in October was 66% higher. If silver is going up and making new highs, it makes no sense that the silver miners are dropping and are lower down. And then yesterday, Bitcoin last few days was up. It's coming back and consolidating down here. I have an alarm set around 93 for a potential trade on this. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm looking at. And that is why. And again, this ties in all the time. If you go back through my investing course blog, I'm talking all the time about trying to work out, joining the dots. What's going to happen next? Where am I focusing next? Where to put my money next? And then to try to balance it all out. So if it all comes tumbling down, that I will not lose. Any questions before we go over to Ashley? Two separate and two. Theo says, this is one hell of a crypto education for me thus far. You're welcome, Theo. There is actually, if you're real technical and you really want to go into this, then if you go onto YouTube, there is a course. Oh, actually, we're up to 2,000 subscribers. There is a course, MIT course on crypto. MIT course, crypto, run by spookily, the aforementioned Gary Gensler that we all grew to hate. And that's what made it even worse when Gary Gensler was head of the SEC. He was previously a professor at MIT who ran a course about crypto. So he knows the benefits of crypto as well as the downside, but he was just behaving like a prat. But this is a full MIT course on blockchain technology. There are 21-hour lessons, which for many will outface you. But it would have cost you, I think, 100K to do this course. So MIT have put that up free. But I say, on a simplistic level, if you just go into the crypto section here, I say, I had quite a lot of older people came along to this session and emailed me afterwards and said, you opened my eyes, Matt. I had no idea what this meant. What I was explaining at the time of this video and webinar was it was all to do with the blockchains. The tokens are just the means of using the technology. And the technology, again, in that video, I spoke about companies in 2020 who were starting to employ people to build blockchains for them or blockchain experts so they could connect to blockchains. That is the way that technology is leading us, and the central banks, having lost control or worrying about losing control, are trying to create their own central bank digital currency because they fear losing control. And then in here I was talking about the different reasons for it and the effect it would have. And then if you're in the investing group, there is in here a full course about cryptocurrencies, and I go through the whole thing in there as well as what I'm buying and selling. What other questions we got? Indy says, if countries created their own digital currency to reduce tax evasion and fraud, i.e. digital sterling, would this impact Bitcoin? No, it would make more people go to Bitcoin. Indy, what the governments are trying to do, in the UK, they're talking about, the EU is pushing ahead quickly, and it's supposed to stop tax evasion and fraud. And to be perfectly blunt, that is bullshit. But there is more dirty money moves through London and Wall Street on a daily basis than the rest of the world put together are moving around. It is all about control. And so I was talking to a Canadian member yesterday, And I've not met a Canadian yet who thinks that voting Mark Carney was a good idea. But if you remember the truckers' strike in Canada a couple of years ago, what they did illegally, the government in the end, to stop them, they froze their bank accounts. But it took them a week or more, and then ultimately they broke the law. If you have a central bank digital currency system, well, I live in Portugal. Last week we had no electricity in middle of Europe for 12 hours. No electricity, no ATM, no internet, no phones, nada. So if everybody's on a digital currency, you would have been completely screwed. But it's all to do with control. It's to do with the fact that they don't like crypto because crypto is outside of their control. And think about it, all these countries have got their own printing presses. They just print more and more and more, which is why the Chinese are rumored to be going back to the gold standard, where every note in circulation is backed by gold, which is what we used to have in the West until Nixon took the Americans off the gold standard back in 1971. So no, and then the other thing is with this central bank digital currency idea as well. You've got Tony Blair lurking in the background in the UK. He's suggested that what should be tied to the digital currency, to your digital central bank card, is that if you've not got your vaccine certificates up to date, you will not be able to fly. There is a Canadian company who has created an app that measures your personal carbon use. And so another suggestion that came out of the World Economic Forum 18 months ago was what we could do is citizens who exceed their personal carbon allowance will have to pay. If you want to travel and you've used up your allowance, you'll have to pay. It's another tax, is all it is. You'll have to pay to be able to go on your holidays or go on a plane. But the way that they were trying to pitch it was this will be really good for poor people because they'll be able to sell their carbon credits to rich people. And this is where you've got, there was a great meme the other day about Al Gore, another climate fraudster. And the meme said, when Al Gore was born 60 years ago, there were 7,000 polar bears on the planet. And today there are only 26,000. And Al Gore lives on a property next to the sea, I think it is, and flies around the world as John Kerry and Bill Gates and all the rest of them, moralizing and lecturing to the rest of us, whilst one of them, I think the Amazon dude, has he got 3 or 4 planes? It's all bullshit. Um, and so for Bitcoin, anybody with any money, to me, is insane if they don't have any Bitcoin. In America, there are 22 million millionaires and there are 800 billionaires. If all of them bought one token, then Bitcoin goes to 1 million overnight. And if they haven't got Bitcoin because they couldn't buy it because of the regulatory or because of compliance or anything, or because they haven't got the knowledge or the intelligence to see what's going on, if you want to stay out of the monetary system, away from control of central bank digital currency, then crypto is an ideal way of doing it. Ashley's quoting something from the BBC. Well, the BBC I very rarely look at because it is the mouthpiece of the British government,
Oh,
but let's see.
I just put that one, but it's everywhere.
Ah, okay. Oh, yeah. Warren Buffett stepping in. How does a person buy silver, physical silver? I'm in the UK. Hi, Theo. I use Bullion Vault, which is this company in the UK, and I believe they're FCA regulated. And you basically, well, I'll just log in and I'll show you. Show me my daughter's account. Hang on. Oh, wrong account. Okay. So let me see. There's nothing personal showing there. Right. Okay. This is Bullion Vault in the UK. So with this, what you get to do is you can go on and buy on the live order board. So you can buy whatever you want to buy. You can. I personally, and for my family, when I'm doing it for them, I buy in Switzerland because I want it away from the UK government. In 1933 in America, the American government forced Americans, on threat of $10,000 fine or 10 years in gold, forced them to hand over their gold. American citizens were not allowed to buy gold in the US until 1971. So gold, if everything turns to the messy stuff, then and all these governments are bankrupt, they could go after your gold. If you live in a country. I live in out in the sticks in Portugal, so it's just not practical for me. But if you live, I have American clients who own physical, and they have the security in the house for it. They've got guns in the house for it. But that's what I do. And what you do in here, you can go in, you can buy 100 quid's worth. You can go in and buy whatever you want to buy, and it's allocated to you and it's audited every day to prove that it exists as well. So that for the UK, you can do that. In the America, there is goldsilver.com. I can't vouch for them because I've never used it. And there are other companies as well. And you can also store this. I think you can store stuff in Singapore as well. But that's how I do it, Theo. The other option is if you're not into buying physical, you can buy an ETF, which in the UK, Theo, you could do inside an ISA, which therefore would be tax-free any gains. So with GDX is one of them. At the minute, they're back up again. So I was hoping they were going to drop a bit further. But GDX is one of them. Oh, I've got that on here. And GDXJ is another. So what you have, anybody spot it? Oh, here we go. This is GDX, and if you have a look at the paperwork, it'll tell you which miners that they're invested in. Ideally, I would be more interested, maybe if we could get back down to $40. And then you've also got junior miners. So that's another one. And again, I have a level set down about 54 that would be interesting. Right, as ever, I am not leaving Ashley any time at all. And that's not fair again. Sorry, Ashley, you've got 12 minutes now. Theo says, oh, brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Check them out. If you send me an email, Theo, I'll send you a link from my daughter. And I think she gets a little bit of a bonus. I think you get a bonus from signing up from a friend. So if you send me an email,